I'm super excited to introduce our next speaker, Denny Lee of Databricks. I've actually heard you talk before. You're in for a good talk, I'm sure. Building agents in production with Agent Bricks, MCP, and ML Flow. All right, take it away, Denny.
Awesome, thank you very much. First questions first. How many of you actually are regularly playing with MCP? I'm just curious. All right, you want to get a hand of the hat? Obviously you did, right? That sort of makes sense. Let's see. How about care about LLM ops as opposed to ML ops? LLM ops. Okay, you don't count, Chang. So, all right. So we've got a couple. All right. All right. So part of the reason I'm doing this presentation today, and I apologize for the camera that I'm walking back and forth, but that's how I do things, is because when it comes to working with agents, there's a big difference between how you do it in terms of having fun. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to insult anybody. I'm just saying how you do it when you have fun versus what you need to do when you put it in production. Okay, so the purpose of today's chat is to reveal a little bit of that differentiation. I still want everybody to play. Okay, I want to be it is extremely important that when you're working or you actually are playing with agents. That's actually a really good way to create the products or the projects that you want to go do. Okay, that's super important. So I'm not trying to tell you don't play. Quite the opposite, I want you all to play. Okay? For example, Justin's presentation about I5 Fair, love it. I filed this problem all the time. My only request to you is can you toss in like versus driving when you're doing a biking route. Okay, yeah, that's my only ask, but we'll talk on the side afterwards, okay? So if you don't know who I am, oh, sorry. This is the weird slide for me. So some of you might have known me for working on open source projects generally in the past. So I've been working with Apache Spark since 0.6, Delta Lake, Unity Catalog, and ML Flow since their inception. Currently, my focus is more around Gen AI, LLM ops, early stage startups, and occasionally I still do OSS stuff. Okay, so that's who I am, and that's why they decided that it made sense for me to come and talk to. But before I do that, I did want to call out some very important people, Alexandra, Daniel, and Elise, so it's recorded. The fact that these people help me because I don't know what I'm doing half the time, and these are the people that actually know what they're talking about, okay? Now, if you don't know who Databricks is, this is my one and only slide pitch. There it is. We're the data and AI company. We're done. Okay, sorry. All right, so what are we going to be talking about today? First, we're going to talk about the state of unions when it comes around about agents, okay? Then I'm going to talk to you why we created Agent Bricks specifically, all right? Then I'm going to show you some quick demos, do some shout-outs to Multi-Agent Supervisor and the MCP catalog that was just announced this week. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how do you ship high-quality Gen AI fast with ML Flow, all right? And then I'm sure you all have questions. I would love this to be interactive, okay? So in other words, if you have a question during the session, ask it, okay? I don't want this to be just like me spieling out a bunch of stuff, all right? All right. So the quick background is building agents today is really, really hard, all right? Oh, actually, sorry, I should even stop because I just realized I started with that statement. Does everybody know what an agent is? Everyone knows? Cool, all right. If everyone knows, then I'll skip past that, but the point is I've got an agent that's doing whatever, okay? Building my expense reports, going ahead and writing all the code for me, whatever it is that I have an agent doing. But actually, building it is hard because evaluation is quite difficult, okay? In other words, more times than not, there's this problem of how do you define what is even good? In other words, if you build an agent, is it good enough? Did it do the job it's supposed to do? All right. There are far too many knobs to play with. For that matter, even just which model you're going to use can be confusing at times. All right. And then what's the trade-off of quality versus quantity versus speed versus latency? All these different things that you're trying to balance. All right. So Agent Bricks is our Databricks, our version of taking all the learnings of the 10,000 plus customers that are building agents within Databricks and trying to make that easy for you, okay? We're not going to remove all the knobs, but we don't start off with you doing all the knobs. That's what Agent Bricks is for, okay? So I'll skip some of the slides, basically. The whole point is that you select your task, figure out what it is, and Agent Bricks automatically does that. Again, I'm skipping through that because I'll rather show this to you as a demo, but this is the background set of slides for that context, okay? All right, and then that's the development process. Deploy an agent, measure quality, identify issues, apply NLP, natural language feedback, excuse me, and then toss back to measuring quality again. So we constantly are improving your agent. So that's a key thing. When you're initially creating an agent or having fun, how are you going to measure, evaluate, is it good? And even after you evaluate, how do you constantly have a feedback loop to improve it, all right? That's the productionization process, simplified obviously, but that's the productionization process when it comes to agents. All right, so what we're GAing this week as part of our Databricks Week of Agents is actually our knowledge assistant. And so anybody know what knowledge assistant is? Yes, no? All right, anybody want to chime in on what it is? So it's not just me talking? Chang, you want to say it? No, I don't know. Okay, a KA, or a knowledge assistant, is about basically, can I, in essence, create a chatbot that actually can tell you what's going on with your data, all right? So for example, when it comes to enterprises, I have all these policy documents, all right, like HR policy or financial policy or sales policy. Does everybody memorize what they all are? No. We all signed off on the documentation that we read it, but we don't actually remember it. So what a KA does in an enterprise is actually to help you remember all these things, okay? All right, so basically, why we talk about Agent Bricks is because higher quality out of the box for building your KA or other agents. That's the real context here, all right? And then you can use the KA to answer the questions you need, and quality improves over time. All right, again, I'll skip to here, all right. Oh, before I go into the demo itself, I did want to, can you guys see this, by the way, very well? Or do I need a zoom? That better? Okay, so I did want to call out before I went into the actual demo here, is that Databricks is the one and only place where you can actually run all of these different large language models, whether it's GPT-5 or Claude Sonnet or GPT-OSS or even Gemini, all within Databricks natively. You don't have to log into Google Cloud to run Gemini. You can run Gemini actually on your own AWS instance, if it comes down to it, all right? So we're one of the few companies that actually have the ability to give you that right out of the gate, all right? So that's actually important because when you're building agents more times than not, you'll want to go ahead and actually swap back and forth between the different models. We're giving you the ability to do that under the same governance, okay? So that's one thing we sort of like about our various agent demos. All right, cool. All right, so I have an agent. Okay, sorry, let me zoom in. There we go. All right, this okay, everybody? Okay, cool. All right, so I want to build an agent, but I want to do it based on cancer clinical data. This is the scenario that I'm going to play with right now, okay? So I'm going to show you one that's already pre-built right away, so you can sort of understand the context of it. And I got to start using the word context a little too much because I think I'm overloading that word. But what it is that we have multiple sources of data. We have the protocols. These are the things that define the clinical trial, all right? So in other words, when you are running a test of clinical trials, this is the data. In this case, it actually happens to be in a vector database, okay, of the protocols. We have a bunch of PDFs, which is the clinical trial results. That's what this is. And then we have the regulatory documents. And then we can ask questions of it, all right? So let me go ahead and switch to this one. Actually, you know what? I'm going to run this one again, just for giggles. All right. So I'm going to run it because this is a live demo. I'm going to go run this first to make sure it actually finishes on time, and then I'm going to go ahead and show you how I built it. All right. So I'm going to run this one, but I'm going to go ahead and actually create this demo right now. So in order for me to create this knowledge assistant, I click on Build, all right? I'm going to describe it, okay? By the way, the descriptions are actually important now because it allows the large language models that you're using for your agents to actually understand the perspective or the context behind what you're building here. All right, trials, KA, So I have a vector search index. Remember I mentioned that it's the protocol data that we have, okay? So I choose that, I confirm that, and it pops it in here. I'm able to see exactly what's the ID or the text for that. So I just drop it in here, and then I can add the additional things. So literally, this is me adding all the sources right away. So this is the clinical trials results right here. You'll notice that basically there's a bunch of PDF files that actually list out all the results from the various clinical trials. They're all listed inside here. All right? And so let's see. and regulatory documents. And these are the regulatory documents. So this is what happens when you regulatory docs. Try to do things live when you're creating a demo. Create the agent, boom, that's it. I did the 3 steps, taking the documents on the vector database that I need, and now I'm creating the agent. Now, I have an agent that is already running because it takes about 20 minutes for it to kick off. But now, I'm able to have this particular agent. This is the exact same one, the one I just created, but it's already working. And I'm actually able to ask some simple questions like, give me a list of the ongoing clinical trials, all right? So, boom. The output's right there in terms of the different clinical trials, which is great. But let me see if I can zoom in on that one. Notice what it says right here? Please note that I cannot definitively confirm that the current status, ongoing versus complete, of these trials from the provided documents alone, as the search results contain protocol information rather than current status updates. In other words, Agent Bricks is returning to tell you that it's not sure if it can actually give you the correct results, okay? Because I never clued in. I never told what's the definition of ongoing versus completed. I implied it, but I never stated what that is. Okay, so how do I improve the quality? Well, click on Improve Quality. I add, okay, and this is where I'm going to do a little bit of copy-paste. All right, so. Oh yeah, sorry, I should have shown you that first. That was the context of what this agent is, the protocol, clinical trials, and regulatory docs. Sorry about that. All right, so I already did that. I'm going to get the list. Ask guidance. All right, so I'm on the ask guidance part now. So let me try to find that. Okay, so I'm just going to copy and paste just because, as you can tell, my typing sort of sucks. All right, so I tell it, add a question, what is an ongoing clinical trial? All right, actually, is that the one I want? Yeah, it is, okay. Okay, so I ask the question, what is an ongoing clinical trial? And then I tell it, the guidelines. In this case, the guidelines is ongoing trials are those that, that have a protocol but no corresponding result doc, okay? I save that, all right? Now I can go back to the same assistant that I have here, okay? Oh, sorry. All right, there we go, it's in there. Then I can ask the same question again. Don't worry, I'll zoom back in. So, sorry, confirming this is the one. Oh, no, maybe not that one. There you go. All right. Ask the same question again. All right. And the results that are going to come out now is that it actually, because I gave this one small little hint in human readable text, is now able to find what is the ongoing clinical trials. All right? This is what we mean by trying to make it easier for you to build agents. You're basically, we have an opinionated way on how to do it. Some of you are going to love it, some of you are going to hate it, but this is from the learnings of the 10,000 or so customers that are actually building agents on our platform. And so we actually put that in, and this time, now the results are very clear. Oops, sorry. Oh, well, can't do that. But these are the not only the trials, but also links to each one of the associated documents to each one of those clinical trials. Okay? So you'll notice that I haven't written a line of code here yet. That's actually the whole point. We're trying to make it easy for you to go ahead and build your agents without any of this stuff. All right? So ultimately, that's the context of Agent Bricks. We have other examples with Genie, other examples that I'm going to show you very shortly. But the point is that by doing things in plain English, you're able to define the policy, and then it's able to go ahead and leverage the LMs and leverage the data that's already sitting in the system, and to basically auto-build your agent right from the get-go. Okay? So that's the first demo. Any questions before I go on? Please. Okay, you've got an excellent question, which is basically, how do I define or understand how I can continue with the high quality, especially when there are more users involved, right? And so ultimately what you do is you need to set up a system where you are actually building up LLM as a judge, and you're actually putting in evaluation metrics to understand, okay, does the data itself actually have the information I need to be able for the model to answer the question, versus, for example, based on human feedback, is the data that I'm providing actually accurate, okay? So the good news is that I actually have a section shortly out, near the tail end of this presentation, which is talking about actually how to build LLM judges with MLflow, which precisely talks about that scenario. So yes, we will dive into that. Any other questions before we switch to the other demo? Because I still do want to go through. Okay, well, there's two right there. All right, so let's go to that.
Just kind of as a follow-up, working with LLMs, sometimes they're accidentally good while you're looking at them. You know, you say, well, this looks fine, and then in production, its dark side comes out. Like, I guess what I'm saying is, how do you know when you need to press improve quality?
Okay, so that's an excellent question. So just as a general rule, if you ever take an LLM, forget about even agents now. If you ever take an LLM and you put in production, by the very definition, you're supposed to constantly measure and evaluate, okay? Because whatever you put in, like, you know, when I'm playing with it on my laptop or I'm playing on a fun Databricks free edition version of it, I guarantee you it will change when you put it in production. If for no other reason, oops, I forgot I was using ChatGPT or GPT-5 before and I switched over to Sonnet 4.5, or I'm now using Gemini, or I'm using a reasoning model, or, okay? Or my favorite one, I ordered the statement, like my actual words that I put in were different order. And because they were different order, I got different results, right? So that's more or less the context. Again, if you play Gen AI as much as I do, context is an overloaded term, and I really have to stop using it. But the point is, depending on the situation, the scenario, anything can change your results, right? We actually value the fact that the LLMs can hallucinate. It allows it to create, I put this in quotes just in case people aren't recognizing it, create different answers. Remember, it's all just a mathematical probability of what the next token is after. That's all this is, okay? But the point is that unless you're actually going ahead and don't want consistency, you want basically answers to be created out of the blue that are hallucinated, you actually need to put these systems in. My favorite one, there was a production customer, which I will not mention because they will shoot me if I do, okay, was running a particular project, okay? I won't mention the cloud provider either because, again, I don't want to get killed. All right, but what ended up happening is that the model of the agent they ultimately built ended up saying, oh yeah, I got access to all these log files so I can tell you blah, blah, blah. But the answer was really weird. So I went in, took a look at this, and then we realized it actually hallucinated the log files. There were actually no log files. The reason we know there weren't any log files is because the agent didn't actually have access to the log files. So the agent actually hallucinated the log files to give us the answer, okay? So unless you build these systems in to evaluate, to put these guardrails, yeah, literally I've got models that will hallucinate entire log files for you, okay? So yeah, so that's why you have to do it in production right away. And I think there's one other question there, and then we'll switch back to the flow.
Hey, yeah, so when you've built one of these like knowledge assistants, do you provide visibility? Like, can I go in and say, okay, here's the system prompt that's being written, here's how the user query is being augmented, and here's how I'm structuring the tool calls that the LLM is using to like access my data?
Yes, okay, so the simple answer is all of it's sitting in Unicatalog. So literally within Databricks. Now, some of you are gonna say, but Denny, that's Unicatalog, that's Databricks, I want to do an OSS. That's a very good question, so I've got an answer for you for that one. No problem. MLflow OSS allows you to do everything I said, and in fact, I'm going to show you that as part of today's session, number one. Number two, if you want to also integrate with Unicatalog, there's also Unicatalog OSS portion that you can actually place it there. So in other words, either scenario works, okay? But basically, to your point exactly, I want to know what the prompt is. I want to know what the history of that prompt is. I want to know which model I used. I want to know which Python version I was using. You want to be able to track the whole thing to be able to do your best to reproduce what you're doing, right? That's what it comes down to. Yes, we have to record all of that metadata because if for no other reason, I want to be able to go back in time and figure out why did this work before and why did it fail now? So excellent question. Yes, we're going to do a little call out to MLflow. It's obvious I'm going to have to do a little bit more there. So in fact, I'm going to skip some of this other stuff because it sort of hits the same point. Okay, so all right. Okay, that's fine. Sorry, I was supposed to. All right, a small but interesting pivot, so it allows me to talk about MCP just for a little bit. In the end, when you build these agents, what's interesting for you is that you actually want to build a multi-agent supervisor. What's a multi-agent supervisor? What I want to do is I want to be able to go ahead and combine multiple agents together that, like for example, I've got an agent that's really good with finance data, very good with marketing data, another one for research, okay? I want to combine that then maybe with an MCP server to go ahead and query some external information. Well, can I just build one agent that actually leverages all these agents? That's what a multi-agent supervisor is. That's it, okay? So a bit of the usual marketing stuff, so I have to slow out. But basically, here's the quick best practices if you're going to take a picture, how to do it. Now, this is obviously specific to Databricks, but the whole point I'm saying is that be very specific on the topic for any of your agents. It doesn't matter if it's Genie or K or anything. Every single agent, before you build a multi-agent supervisor, you want to be very specific. So that way, when your multi-agent supervisor kicks in, it knows which agent to query. All right? If you're not specific, then all of a sudden it'll try to query all of them. Not only will it slow it down, it's super expensive, okay? And I'm actually trying to save you money. I'm not trying to make you spend more money, okay? You're going to iterate on the quality for each of the sub-agents first. In other words, each sub-agent that you've got, you're actually going to, like, whether it's a KA, whether it's Genie, I don't care what it is, you're going to go ahead and make sure that sub-agent's really, really good first. It's tuned well first. Once you do that, then you can go ahead and make sure your overall multi-agent supervisor is actually a really good setup. You want to add examples to your descriptions, okay? So in other words, normally, especially in this demo, you'll notice that basically I went through and put in like these examples really, really quick, okay? Like cancer clinical trial KA without, in this case, without improvement for feedback, okay? But it's improved now because I actually chucked this inside there, all right? But that's usually not good enough. This is good enough for a specific demo that I threw in. The reason I use the cancer stuff is because this happens to be a cancer data set that's public, so I was able to use it. It's from Europe. Alexandra was the one who created it, so I want to give the shout out to her for starters. But so the questions I'm asking, you notice, are very specific to clinical trials or to cancer or whatever else. If I start tossing other questions like which place makes the best bagel, probably not going to answer that question right, and I'm not going to run it because I swear to God, GPUs are going to be burned just for doing that. Okay? And we also know the answer is Montreal bagels. Yes, to all my New Yorker friends, I'm willing to start the war on that one. Okay? So, all right. So the context is you also need to make sure there's, in addition to all these other things, in terms of giving specific examples, because those example descriptions actually help the agent understand what's going on. This is, by the way, not just specific to Databricks. I mean, this is for any agent in any system that you've got, period. If you're not specific, you can't get the agent to do the right thing for you. All right? And then the final tidbit, gather feedback from SMEs. Everybody wants and hopes that they can just go ahead and build up an agent and they don't have an SME come over, subject matter expert, come over and explain what's working and what's not working. That's the problem. Your agent is only as good as the feedback you provide. If you don't go through the process of actually improving that agent, you're screwed, okay, from a production perspective, all right? So you want to play it on yourself, that, goofing off, I'm asking about, bagels, sure, works perfectly fine. But if I need to go ahead and go in production and have a debate with, the next great chef about why Montreal bagels are better, probably not set up very well. Mind you, I can probably do it myself, but that's way out of line with what we're talking about today. And so with the idea, this bottom right quality audit compliance, that was actually the one we had just shown. So if you have a multi-agent supervisor to add in things, you can add in all these other scenarios, okay? So I'm going to go back to that and show a real quick shout out to that, but this is the context I'm trying to get at. Because MCP is super important, okay? Why? Can anybody tell me? Maybe, Justin, you want to tell me why? Sorry to call you out, just because you... Oh, fair enough. That's fair. Oh, sorry. I was going, why is MCP important? That's all I was saying. Just because you already covered it in your session. That's all.
In my opinion, MCP is important because it efficiently and consistently delivers tools available to the LLMs and thusly to the agent, so the agent can focus on other things such as workflow and things like that.
Perfect answer. Was definitely going to be better than mine. So
good collab.
Yeah. Good, excellent collab. All right, the reason why we talk about MCP so often is because all the things that an LM by itself can't do unless you add additional tooling, which is the purpose of an agent, okay? So what we announced today, this week, was the MCP in Databricks Marketplace. So all of these different, this is our first starting point, and with all these different companies, they have these MCP endpoints that are actually part of Databricks itself. So what do I mean by that? I'll demo it to you instead. Okay, so if I go ahead and build an agent, you'll notice that it says right there, MCP servers new. Now, mind you, this is relatively new, so I literally only have 4 of them working so far, okay? But the context I'm trying to get at is like, if I want to go ahead and create, let's just say, a connection to u.com, their MCP server, I can click install, and I can do the, put in the keys directly in here. That's stored in Unique Catalog, okay? So it's secured. And then once we do that, then if I want to create a multi-agent supervisor, let's see if I've got this running somewhere. Okay, maybe this one. Okay, here's the clinical trials one. If I wanted to add a u.com one, I'm going to do me a favor and so you can see this a little bit better, and I'll zoom back in afterwards. MCP server. Boom. That's it. That's how I build a multi-agent supervisor with the knowledge assistant that I just showed you, plus the MCP connection. That's it. That's all it takes for us to go ahead and add MCP directly into a Databricks workspace. And just as importantly, it's under a unique catalog governance structure. So in other words, I don't want people accessing my u.com access, so of course I can't. But if I have anybody else log in, they can't see it. Why? Because it's my money that's paying for this particular MCP connection right now, so I don't want people to blow it, okay? So because we have about 8 minutes left, I'm going to zip through some other stuff real quick because I wanted to end at least with MLflow real quick, okay? Because we had a really good question when it comes to ensuring quality. So MLflow was known for building really high quality ML ops. What it's not as well as known for is for LLM ops, okay? So I want to call that. MLflow is actually really helpful for you to ship high-quality Gen AI fast. These are the numbers, 800 plus contributors, 5,000 plus organizations, 25 million plus monthly downloads. This is an open source project, which is sweet. All right. Right in MLflow, you're able to debug with tracing right away. This is the UI. This is all open source. I'm not showing you a single Databricks thing now, okay? I take off the Databricks hat. I'm showing you the open source hat right now, okay? So this is pure open source where I can debug my tracing with the UI directly in there, okay? I can actually measure freeform LM judges right inside there. I can see how the judges are operating with the UI, all right? I have a prompt registry. I had a really fun debate with Jim Howling just this morning about whether that prompt registry should be in GitHub or whether it should be in database. There's no decision on that, but the point is, within MLflow itself, you actually can track what changes were made to the prompt and track the entire lineage of said prompt. Okay? There's an AI gateway. In other words, you want to have a gateway that goes and talks to different providers right within MLflow, so you can switch back and forth between all the different providers that you may have access to. It's pre-built in, okay? So, and you're saying, but Denny, debug is really hard. Is it hard when I have one line? That's what it is, right there. mlflow.langchain.autolog. That's it. Okay, there are about 25 different providers that we're already integrated with. So basically, all you do is do MLflow dot whatever provider you want, dot autolog, and it will automatically log all the traces for you right away. Okay? So the final tidbit I want to call out, most people don't know you can do this. How do I choose the best model? And I'm going to show you how to do it with MLflow. I'm going to scare you a little bit because there's a lot of code. I'm only going to point to the most obvious parts. And yes, we will make this notebook available for you later on. Okay? So, all right. How do I choose them? For example, why don't I choose GPT-5 versus Claude Sonnet 4.5? Let's just say I want to do that. Okay? I already reran all these stuff so that way I can actually have a decent flow. So let's close that. Let's go here. All right. So let me close this. How's it for, can you guys see it okay? Okay, cool. All right. So there is, yes, there's a bunch of setup and prerequisites that you have to go in. All right. Yes, there is code that has to be written. All right. So, but again, we'll make this notebook available for you to download and you can play with it. I'm just going to call out the key things. All right. How do I test the agent? All right. the testing the agent is this set of code to run it, okay? I got a 5-minute warning, so I will finish in 5 minutes, all right? What you'll notice right here, oh, sorry, let me close this too so it's easy to see. Okay, all right. You have a summary of what actually the trace of the UI in terms of what actually happened when you ran a particular model, okay? That's right here. You also have the details and timeline in terms of what were the inputs and what were the outputs, okay? That's all logged in here. This is all MLflow log tracing. These are logs that are directly on your machine if you wanted to do it that way, okay? Now, we do put the stuff directly in the Unity catalog as well if you want it, but this is not a requirement, all right? So that's what I mean by test the agent. I know what the input is. I know what the output is. It's perfect. All right, that's the first point I want to call out. Second point is I want to define the scores, okay? So there's define scores. So you're going, Denny, what the hell's a score? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. We have a bunch of text here, but I'm going to just have you focus on this. Scores are basically how MLflow allows us to put metrics on said metrics. How do you evaluate these systems? Okay, how do you evaluate how well the model or the agent is doing? The two we're going to showcase here is evidence groundness and rationale sufficiency. What is evidence groundness? Did the model's answer stick to the facts in the actual documents? Right? After all, you're worried about hallucination. So, in other words, does it pass or fail when the model actually chose information that's physically in the docs? Rational sufficiency is basically, does it actually have enough information to actually give you the answer? So in other words, maybe it pulled in the right docs, but there actually wasn't enough information in the docs to actually give a right answer, i.e. back to hallucination again, all right? Rational sufficiency can also be helped from a judge perspective because we can go ahead and have human feedback to tell it, yes, it had enough information, no, it didn't. Right now, everything I'm showing is more of a pass-fail type scenario. Oh, sorry, well, you can take a picture of that, okay? But let's go to that. So, give me a second. All right, define the scores. Nah, let's just run baseline evaluation since we don't have much time left. All right, so we run it here. Here's the UI again. And so right here, as you'll notice here on the right side, this particular example run that I have, evidence groundness, it did pass. Okay, there are actual documents, but it failed on rational sufficiency. Okay, it failed in other words, there wasn't actually enough information in said documents to provide the correct answer, i.e. it's starting to hallucinate an answer for you. Not as bad as hallucinating entire log files, but still, it failed, okay? All right, then you can actually provide feedback. So if I just pop it over, you as the user can go ahead and actually provide feedback. This is Daniel, he's the guy who built this demo, can actually provide feedback directly into this, whether it was correct or not, okay? This is what I mean by actually making it easy to provide human feedback into the systems, all right? If you don't make it easy to provide real feedback, it's just, in terms of just pass or fail, you can't get the agents or the LLMs to actually judge the information properly so it can actually take over some of these things, okay? So you actually have to have an ability to put actual text feedback that's meaningful directly inside the system. That's why it goes back to subject matter experts all the time, okay? So then, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna switch over to the, because I've got, what, 2 minutes left? Let's see. Okay, I'm comparing Claude versus GPT-5 Mini, okay? So now I'm gonna do the judgment. I'm gonna jump directly to the UI, but basically I compare two different states. You'll notice that, oh, sorry, there we go. Let's see, I'm gonna scroll backwards just so you can see this a little bit better, okay? Sorry, you'll notice on the right side, there's the model, GPT-5 Mini versus Claude Sonnet, okay? And then it'll tell you what the context is, what the response was, what the values for the two assessments, and what's the status, okay? And so I'm gonna focus a little bit on this one here, which is basically saying GPT-5 Mini is passing, but Claude is failing, all right? So if you wanna get into it, I click on this one. This is an example where we're saying, this particular example is a ghost kitchen idea, where basically you have a kitchen that's getting feedback from users saying, oh, am I gonna give them a refund? Why am I giving them a refund? Because the food sucked, like the fries were really soggy, or the delivery was delayed. Okay, this is the example that I'm showing right now. And what I'm saying is that all the information here, the detailed assessments, rational sufficiency, evidence groundness for the two different traces, one trace was run for Claude, the other trace was run for GPT, is all inside here, okay? And so the idea is that this is, as you can tell, it's a very, very powerful tool. It seems intimidating, but it's a very, very powerful tool for you to have the ability to go ahead and actually judge your models directly and ultimately judge your agents directly, okay? This is all open source. We'd love you to play with it. All you got to do is go to mlflaw.org. We have plenty of documentation that explains everything. Okay? So that's my tidbit because I think I'm now running out of time, but I would love to do any Q&A with whatever time we have left.
5 minutes for questions.
Sweet. Oh, sorry. I did forget to call this out. We released this this week as well. We actually, to make it easier for you, you don't actually have to do anything I just showed you if you didn't want to. You can download the Judge Builder. Okay? So that's free. It's on GitHub. Literally look for, I'll send the slides out anyways, but the idea is if you look for the from pilot to production with custom judges, you can actually do everything I just said, but done within this very simplified UI. Okay? So I did forget to call that out. So I'll leave that up, and then yes, then now it's QA time, but I'll leave that up so you guys can play with it. Yeah.
Hello, yeah. You talked a little bit about the importance of model evaluation metrics. Can you talk about metrics that you think are more human recognizable than the ones that you had here in your slides where, they're, I don't know, numeric values or, easily calculatable type evaluation metrics?
No, that's an excellent question. The problem, as a general rule, is that the ones that are more human recognizable actually don't provide nearly as much value. Okay, it's a gross overstatement that I'm saying, by the way, to be very clear about it. But as a general rule, understanding the numeric sense of what's underneath some of these other metrics actually will ultimately make it easier for you to assess everything properly. Now, we are trying to make it a lot easier to understand some of these things, which is why we built this particular app. Okay, so that way it becomes more human recognizable. So in other words, what I'm implying very strongly is that we as a community have done a very poor job educating people on what all this stuff is. Okay, that's actually what I'm implying strongly. But I don't mind saying that because I'm actually not trying to lay blame to anybody. What I'm trying to explain is that this stuff moves really, really fast. Some of these metrics that you're seeing are literally research papers from 6 months ago or 3 months ago. So of course it's hard for us to go ahead and explain what it means when literally these are research papers from 3 months ago. Okay? So I don't fault anybody for wanting it to be a lot more human readable. We're just simply saying that, okay, some of these metrics are based off of research. We as an overall community need to do a better job explaining this stuff. That fair? Cool.
We have time for one more question.
Shoot.
This kind of circles back to your knowledge agents conversation. I've had some instances where I've built some on internal knowledge bases, and I'm kind of curious about how you might, for lack of a better way to say it, circumvent the dumb questions that burn money that shouldn't even be going through that. They have the best intent kind of thing, but I have had situations where I end up spraying and still trying to find that information and generate a response for them. How do you kind of handle those preemptive scenarios to avoid that unnecessary expenditure in agent workflows like this?
Okay, so there's two slightly different answers that I'm going to give you, but they're both valid. I don't really know what applies to you better. Okay? One is actually you literally use a guardrail mechanism, put that in front of your agent, and literally prevent questions from actually happening. All right? The second answer I'm going to give you is basically the same version of it, but what you do is you build an LLM to do that. Okay? Now, what are you doing? You have it. Let's just use MFlow as an example, just for shits and giggles. I've got a trace of every single question that's asked. There's probably that one guy that's asking these idiotic questions that you're thinking of right now. Yes, I know, okay? I'm probably that guy at times, so, I'll call a spade, okay? So you can then use the trace that happens to have that one guy, have those questions, and then you build a very simple LLM, ragify it, fine-tune it if you want to. What does it do? Oh, Denny is asking a bagel question again. Redirect, right? Okay. Seriously, it is actually a good exercise. I don't think you want to start that way just because of it can get a little expensive to do that. What you do is, though, you show the metrics. This person is burning how many GPU hours? Okay, cool. Yeah, now I have the justification to do everything I just said. Yeah, but first you build the guardrail, and then what I'm inclined to do is build the guardrail with an LLM. But a small one, 5.4, something tiny, almost 1. Yeah, okay, sorry.
All right, that's time. Let's thank our speaker again.
Thanks very much, everybody.